A fight is going on inside of me. An old Cherokee told his daughter about life. The fight is between two wolves. One wolf represents empathy, generosity, humility, kindness, and truth. And the other represents arrogance, corruption, greed, lies, and resentment. And the same fight is inside of you and everybody else. Which wolf will win? The daughter asked. The one you feed, the old Cherokee replied. Hello everybody, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about the path of the middle way. That is, everything in moderation, including moderation. We live in a complicated reality. The dualities of modern life have driven many of us to have an identity crisis. I spoke about this in a previous video, and I will link it here. Everywhere we look, there is a romanticization of living an extreme lifestyle. In order to be successful and happy in this life, you must wake up at 4 in the morning, meditate for 3 hours a day, quit your job, start your own business, discard everything that you own, be vegan and sober. Some of history's greatest thinkers have discouraged us from living this extreme lifestyle as well, and have advocated for the path of the middle way because they saw that living in extremes is unsustainable and unrealistic. That's not to say that we should never set goals for ourselves. And sometimes, for some people, hard lines are necessary. That is a separate conversation. But for most of us, we should strive to reject these extremes, these labels that we attach to our personalities, these boxes that we force ourselves to align with. The work begins with yourself, learning who you are, your goals, your limits, your balance between work and play, and what a good life looks like to you. So without further ado, let's talk about 4 philosophical theories of living in moderation. First, the path of the middle way was popularized by the Buddha as a term of art to refer to the rejection of extreme asceticism as well as extreme indulgence. He discovered the middle way because Siddhartha Gautama, or the Buddha, was born a prince in Nepal, but he renounced his life of luxury to become a beggar that engaged in self-mortification in an attempt to reach enlightenment. Having lived both extremes of life, hedonism and austerity, he learned that neither would lead to enlightenment. On the contrary, the enlightened one would realize the middle path, that is, the Noble Eightfold Path, which includes right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Now, what it means to be right is a conversation for another day. About 100 years later, in ancient Greece, Aristotle would write in the Nicomachean Ethics about the golden mean, which allows us to pinpoint virtues of character. In other words, we can discover what virtuous traits in humans entail by locating the desirable middle between excess and deficiency. For example, the virtuous course of action in the face of fear is courage, whereas an excess of courage manifests as recklessness, and a deficiency of courage manifests as cowardice. And the same calculation can be performed for any other human quality. Thus, it is not surprising that carved on the front of the temple at Delphi are the words, "Nothing in excess." Nearly 2,000 years later, in Germany, Friedrich Nietzsche would write in The Birth of Tragedy about the sublime dialectic between the Apollonian and Dionysian forces. The god Apollo represents truth, whereas Dionysus, the god of wine, represents ecstasy. Nietzsche rejected the hierarchy laid out by Plato and others thousands of years prior, or the idea that reason is superior to emotion, but rather, he argued that the combination of these two forces, truth and ecstasy, logic and animalism, were equally powerful forces that could combine to create the pinnacle of culture, the pinnacle of life. And finally, around the same time in Austria, Sigmund Freud began to formulate his theory of psychoanalysis. Freud proposed that the human mind could be divided into three parts: the id, our unconscious impulses to seek gratification, the superego, the moral police, if you will, and the ego, which is tasked with striking a balance between the two. A healthy ego is one that can filter and compile information from both of these extremes. On the other hand, an ego that is malfunctioning or overwhelmed may employ a series of defense mechanisms to cope. As human beings, we are governed by emotion and reason. We are somewhere in between animal and angel, and yet we have forgotten our animalism and we cast it off as something inferior, as something less than, when rather we should be embracing our animalism as a very important part of our humanity. This thinly veiled neuroticism and perfectionism about how we should live our lives can be incredibly damaging. Because when we fail to live up to these astronomical standards, we feel guilty and ashamed, and we self-flagellate. I think that's all for today. As always, thank you so much for being here. I honor you. Please like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already for more philosophy. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.